the girl next door who became an overnight pop sensation.
It was pure hit factory stuff. Her image kind of matched the music, really. It was light-hearted, frothy pop.
But then she rebelled against the hit machine that made her...
Kylie Minogue will not let anyone stand in her way to stop where she wants to go.
Only to be reborn once again as pop perfection.
The slogan would have been, Kylie, have you forgotten how hot she is?
An expert at playing the media, she has tried to keep her personal life out of the public eye.
The only people that have really spoken about Kylie's relationships are the men involved.
Her battle with cancer has now propelled her to iconic status. But who is really behind the pose?
There's not much emotion in what she does. It's like a facade, and it's a very brittle facade.
Kylie is exposed. Always ready with a smile for the paparazzi, Kylie effortlessly works the camera.
She doesn't kind of separate herself from the paps at all. Some stars look at them as though it's a necessary evil, but she's got a kind of twinkle in her eye.
Famous for her enigmatic celebrity, she has one of the most tightly controlled PR strategies in pop. Exposed will bring you a look at the pictures that have created such a controversial icon and the ultimate pop idol.
The whole point of Kylie is it's a facade. People don't buy Kylie records and go, oh, I wonder what's going on in her soul. Who's interested in that? The whole thing is a fantasy. It is not real.
Kylie's Showgirl tour kicked off in Glasgow in March 2005, and she embarked upon a grueling schedule across Europe. The image of the showgirl embodied everything she stood for. Kylie was born to entertain and driven to delight her audience.
She was a showstopper, basically, from beginning to end. You expect something spectacular, and Kylie gave it to us.
She was in a sort of classic Moulin Rouge outfit, plumes up to here, making her about 6 feet tall, which is a big feature for little pint-sized Kylie.
Kylie had been receiving rave reviews in the press for her spectacular performances and was about to begin the Australian leg of the tour when devastating news hit the headlines.
She suddenly found a lump, disappeared off the scene, came back weeks later and announced publicly that she had breast cancer.
I mean, this is our little Kylie, and suddenly she might be dead. It was very, very serious.
It was the biggest story of the year. It was enormous tabloid news. It was enormous broadsheet paper news as well.
I think it had this kind of double impact in that she was so famous, yet we knew so little about her, and all of a sudden she'd shown this vulnerability.
People suddenly saw her as a human being just like us. It's the worst, most unbelievable story because it is like this should not happen to the fantasy.
Our vision of Kylie as plastic pop perfection had been shattered. She had been performing for over 20 years and seemed irrepressible in her ability to regenerate and reinvent herself. Without warning, Kylie had suddenly become very human. Cancer was one of the few things in her life that was out of her control, and she immediately shrunk away from the limelight.
And there wasn't the sort of usual sort of messages coming out from her office. She sort of went completely into focus in dealing with that.
The press being what it is, we want to learn more, we want to know as much as we can. What was the treatment? How was she feeling? How was she looking? And that sort of thing. All Kylie wanted at this point was to be left alone.
I remember there was a statement put out on GMTV, and we were watching it on that morning, and it was absolutely huge, and everyone was really upset by it and really worried because what were her chances? And the fact that you knew she was going to be charted every step of the way.
The story attracted huge public interest. However, the press had to be careful with their coverage. The media needed to maintain a respectful distance in order to avoid being accused of distasteful reporting, whilst at the same time satiating the public's uneasy curiosity.
The press reaction to Kylie's cancer is quite interesting, really, because it's almost turns into like sainthood, the way they kind of talked about it, in almost like religious kind of terms.
You start getting some quite ludicrous stories about that Kylie is being nursed by nuns and stuff.
How do you write about something like that? It's a difficult one to write about, but of course they utterly sensationalise it like they always do. And in the end in Australia they had to virtue court orders to stop the press trying to get stories off the family and off Kylie as well.
A steady stream of unsettling photos depicting her recovery filtered through to the media, and the public discreetly devoured every shot seized of the star.
You know, obviously people did want to see the first pictures of her, not necessarily looking bad, because I think no one really wanted to see her look bad. No one wanted to see the reality of Kylie with cancer, which was bloating from chemotherapy, a headscarf.
I think there's always a sort of perverse fascination that we want to see how somebody ill is doing. And I think from the point of view of showing us that Kylie was still alive, the pictures were, fair enough.
The press were a lot less intrusive than they may have been with someone else. And I think that's because of our relationship with Kylie. And if it had been someone else, they would have been far more intrusive.
Kylie took almost 2 years off to treat her cancer. To show the world she was well again, she decided to pick up where she had left off and resume touring in Australia. To accompany the tour, a behind-the-scenes documentary was made by her loyal friend William Baker. The film was called White Diamond and promised to be a revelatory portrait of the star.
For anybody to believe that White Diamonds was going to be like a warts and all documentary must have been really, really stupid or utterly naive. Because when you're someone like Kylie, you're not going to tell the story. She'll probably tell her own story in the end, but you're not going to do it now. Now you've got records coming out.
It was hailed as Kylie's treat for her public, her way of giving us all an insight into the person behind the pop facade. Kylie claimed, "It is important that people see me as a human, three-dimensional being. If nothing else, I think I've proved to people with this film that yes, I'm very, very human." However, rumours were rife that Kylie had heavily censored the documentary, cutting out anything revelatory, leaving her audience feeling cheated. Was this the first spark of a Kylie backlash? Or after 20 years sustaining such a tightly guarded image, did we never really expect her to give anything away?
Kylie is not in the business or interested in self-revelation.
Will Baker is obviously her confidant and best friend, and so if he's the guy who made a film of her, then it's more or less her making a film about herself. So why you should expect any dark revelations from something like that, I don't know.
Coming up, Kylie delights in shocking the public as she delves into her dark side.
All of a sudden, I'm dating Michael Hutchence. Well, hold on a minute. Back up the truck. This doesn't go.
And the pop princess is reborn as she reveals her best asset.
Where has she been hiding up her little thing?
She was the girl next door who was moulded into a musical mannequin. Heavily stage managed at every turn, what drove her to break free from the pop production line that made her and reclaim control over the commodity she had become? In 1986, when she was just 18, Kylie won the role of Charlene Mitchell in the hit Australian soap Neighbours. She played a tomboy car mechanic who was dating local heartthrob Scott Robinson, played by Jason Donovan. The series was a huge success, especially in the UK, and Kylie and Jason rapidly became household names.
If we just squint our eyes and use our memory, remember that sort of bob of frizzy curly hair?
The programme was massive. Kids used to rush home from school to watch it, and everybody had fallen in love with the idea of Scott and Charlene. And I think young teenagers and young kids really kind of believed it was a real world somewhere in Australia.
Of course, they gave her the best storyline, which was her romance with Scott, aka Jason Donovan, and their wedding, when it happened, was the second biggest wedding of the 80s after Diana and Charles.
Kylie and Jason's on-screen romance continued off-screen, and the couple were warned by TV execs to keep their relationship under wraps for fear that it would be damaging to the show.
The producers wanted it to be fictional. They wanted the public and the audience to identify with Charlene and Scott, not with Kylie and Jason. Everybody guessed that they were having an affair. They were denying they were having an affair, and she was practically shacked up with him.
Although Kylie was keen to let the world know about their romance, she agreed to remain silent about the affair. This was to be the start of a tightly controlled career and media image that would go on to dominate her personal life.
Inevitably, people saw them act together. I think as a couple, they got increasingly frustrated. They wanted to tell the world that, they were together and they were in love.
I don't think it was manipulation. I think it was a great plan. I also think they probably enjoyed it because they were young lovers, and keeping it a secret probably adds a certain frisson to the whole relationship.
Execs soon realised they could cash in on the relationship, and in 1988, as part of a heavily engineered PR strategy, they admitted their love for one another. With the release of the single, Especially for You, it sold over 1 million copies in the UK alone.
I Ironically, I think it was probably nearer the end of their relationship than maybe the people behind the record had perceived. It was a carefully managed and orchestrated relationship that had, limitless financial possibilities, I think, for the hitmakers behind the two.
Kylie had signed up to Mushroom Records in 1987 after her vocal talents were spotted at a benefit concert in Australia, where she performed the track Locomotion. The record company decided to release it as a single in Australia to coincide with Scott and Charlene's wedding in Neighbours, ensuring maximum publicity and a #1 hit. Kylie's commercial potential had been recognised, and it wasn't long before she was packed off to London to meet songwriters Stock, Aitken and Waterman.
They forgot all about her, and she was actually in the office in London, and Waterman was away around the country, and nobody was there. We better do something for her, and they sort of wrote "I Should Be So Lucky" in a couple of hours for her, so that at least her trip wasn't wasted.